From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight, breaking down the Broncos-Seahawks game. The first game is in the books. Unfortunately, the Broncos on the losing end of this as they fall 17-16 in Seattle. To break it all down with us today, the great Steve Atwater in studio. What up, At?
What up, R. Edwards?
Good to have you here, man.
It's good to be here.
It's good to finally have football back, even though, unfortunately, it's not the outcome I think we all were looking for. We'll get into some of the finer details of this one. From a broad strokes perspective, what did you see in this game?
Well, I saw a team that came out. They played hard. I think that was one of the things I was worried about. Not that they play hard, but the physicality, because hardly any of the starters played in the regular season. But the physicality was on point, man. I thought the guys were physical. They were flying around, but I think the emotions got a little bit too high. The penalties that we had, they were guys just being a little bit too aggressive. I think we can clean those things up. Although we got the loss, I still feel really positive about where we're going to go this year. I really do.
I think the takeaway for me is that everything went wrong was correctable.
Yes.
There wasn't anything that went wrong that wasn't correctable. You look at the fumbling in the goal line and running out of the gun. First of all, you're running out of the gun. Like, to me, you got to establish your quarterback before you run out of the gun like that. If you're going to run out of the gun, your quarterback has to be a threat on that play. Second of all, you've got to get some communication issues. We saw Russ throw to the wrong spot on the Jerry Jeudy touchdown. We saw Graham Glasgow didn't get the audible because it was so loud in there, and Graham Glasgow went into a pass set when everybody else was run blocking on that Javonte fumble. We saw there was a lot of miscommunication, and then the penalties. I mean, that's the big thing to me is we gave 40% of Seattle's first downs on that game came by a penalty. 40%. That is unacceptable. So you're gonna have to get that tuned up, and most of those were on the defense. I only thought I saw one of those penalties that I was like, and that was the Cooper, taunting.
Yeah,
that was soft.
Yeah, like, come on.
The rest of that stuff, though, man, those were legitimate penalties. I mean, they were legit. So we got to own that. We got to figure that out.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we're used to, I think, here watching the Broncos to a very limited amount of penalties. Vic Fangio, I mean, for whatever you want to say about him as head coach, that was one of the things he got in here right away and cleaned up. They were top 3 in the league most seasons in penalties allowed. So it is a bit of an adjustment, but we knew there was going to be a little bit of rust. We knew there was going to be maybe a little bit of sloppy play. Again, the starter's not out there, and it's a tough environment to play out there in Seattle. So I think the way you guys broke that down is fair. We will get to the end of the game because I think that's something that's everybody's sort of sticking on. But let's start with the offense here. Russell Wilson did look like, again, maybe not as sharp as we've seen him overall the course of his career, but I thought there was a lot there to build on. If we could look at that as a bit of a baseline of his performance and think, okay, well, it's only going to improve from there, I mean, I think you got to be pretty thrilled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Come on, what's that? 29 out of 42 attempts, 340 yards in a tub? Come on now.
Yeah, 70% passing, 340 yards. The offense rolls up 450. I mean, come on now. That offense was hitting.
Yeah, now, obviously, like you mentioned, Ben, the fumbles that hurt, clutch situations. But again, I don't think this will be the norm. That's not going to be the norm for Javonte Williams to fumble down there. Same with Melvin Gordon. Now, we know Melvin in the past has had some fumbles. I don't think it's the norm for him, though. I really don't.
The interesting balance, though, 42 passing attempts, only 20 rushing attempts. And you average 5.2 yards per carry on the ground. I mean, Javonte averaged, 6.1. So, honestly, that was the one thing that was a little bit of a surprise in a game that you were relatively close. You weren't running it all that much.
They got away from it in the second half, and I think they probably should have stuck with it. You weren't down so much that you needed to get away from it. I think they could have done a little more with that, but they may not have had confidence in the offensive line. On the right side, you had Cam Fleming out there filling in for Billy Turner. Cam had,
I thought he actually pretty good.
He did okay, but he got the penalty early on. You had Graham Glasgow stepping up for Quinn Meinerz, and he was a little banged up in that game too. He had a little foot thing going on. He was their last line there. So you weren't getting quite the push I think that you wanted to in the run game at times. You were getting it on the outside. Javonte was getting those outside runs. Those were good. Melvin, I think he averaged 4.8 for the game if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look. That's still a good number, but it felt like they weren't getting exactly what they wanted out of that, and they were getting what they wanted out of the pass game, so they went back to it.
It seems to me like they just substituted in some of those screen plays for runs.
Yeah.
And they just, those are basically run plays, low-risk passes, offensive linemen getting out there to get in space, making blocks, and, Javonte and Melvin been able to read. I think Javonte more so than Melvin. I think they threw more screens to Javonte than Melvin, but I just think they substituted it. I would look at a lot of those screens as run plays, and that was very effective.
All right. So definitely those are things to build off of. Again, looking for a little bit more balance out there. That'll be something I'm sure Coach Hackett will address. Talking about the receivers, though, early on, it was all about the tight ends, right? Andrew Beck was the offense on that first drive, and he was making great plays, including the one-hander. Albert Okuebanam had a couple of nice, really good catches in there. But Jerry Jeudy, of course, had the biggest play of the game, the 67-yarder. And it was really the only time, though, that they really pushed the deep ball. I know they did a couple of them. They got a couple of DPIs, but I wonder if that's something also we're going to see developmentally for this offense. Ben, I'll ask you first on this. Developmentally for this offense, seeing the ball pushed down the field a bit more.
It took 3 or 4 shots down there. It's just the timing, as we've seen in camp, the timing on the deep ball is still off. Russ, people said he underthrew Jerry Jeudy. I think he threw to the wrong spot, because if you look at the replay, there wasn't a shortage of velocity on the ball. He just threw to the wrong spot. He did it to Cortland, too. On the one that wasn't even the DPI, he threw it inside. Cortland had outside leverage, and he threw it inside. The ball should have been on the other side of the...
Right after the turnover.
Right. Ball should have been on the other side of the receiver. Just the placement on the deep ball's off. They're going to have to get that. They're going to have to figure that out. The Jerry Jeudy thing, he just threw it to the wrong spot, and I think it's because he didn't have confidence in his guy. He didn't know where he was going to be. They don't have that rapport down yet. Didn't know where he was going to be. And so, I think there are kinks to work out with that deep ball and all that kind of stuff. They did a lot of high percentage stuff underneath and, to the sides and what we expected to get them in rhythm. I think they're shaking off the rust. I think you got a team that hasn't played together, and this is their first live fire action. It looked sloppy in the first half. Hat tip to the defense, though, for turning it on in the second.
Yeah, and, any team's going to have a ramp-up period, especially when guys haven't gone live. They're being taken to the ground offensively, and then as defense, you're taking guys all the way to the ground. I've always said that's a big change from running, even thudding up. It's a huge difference between going to the ground and then you got to get up after the play, and every time you push yourself up, hey, that's another rep, another bit of energy taken out. So I think it'll come though. Just the callousing that Coach Fangio mentioned. This is a part of it, man. We're getting calloused, and although we're all disappointed that we lost the football game. I'm not discouraged because what I saw, I thought looked good.
I talked to a player last night who said he felt better after 0-1 than he did after 3-0 last year.
Yeah,
about the prospects of this team, and he was
because the offense.
I mean, he was legitimate about it. He said we have confidence that they can score points, even though they didn't get the points this time. When is the last time we ever saw 2 fumbles happen back to back from the 1-yard line on the goal line? 1987, and it was Scabs in the Scabs in the strike here.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, and I wanted to get into the overall thoughts here, but one more thing on I just want to get to the defense. You teased on it there. The second half for the defense really kind of buckled things down, and then I think there were some communication issues. Even Kareem Jackson came out and said, hey, it would have helped to have some preseason reps for some of these starters, at least for the communication stuff, but it seemed like they made the correct adjustments. They only allowed 34 yards of offense from the Seahawks in the second half. They didn't get past midfield, 0 points, and it was dominance, really, for the Broncos defense in the second half. That feels like something that you absolutely can build off of.
Absolutely, and really only giving up 17 points. I mean, who can be upset with that? Under 300 yards offense they gave up. Again,
34 in the second half.
The physicality was there. Bradley Chubb, 2 sacks. Randy Gregory had a nice, caused fumble. So did Ronald Darby.
Yep.
The guys, they were ball conscious. They were getting the ball out. Now we didn't get any interceptions. Got to get that going, but I think it's going to come, man.
Pastor Tan, I thought played a hell of a game.
Oh yeah, up against DK Metcalf.
Yeah, the ball just did not bounce the Broncos' way all night. Whether it was the fumbles at the goal line for the Broncos, which was the fumbles they didn't recover. Charles Cross, the rookie for Seattle, with the heady play to get after it was stripped out of his hand. I mean, Blythe falls on that ball down the field. How often is your center down there after your running back gets stripped? It just doesn't happen. It's a confluence of things that just doesn't happen, and it's good for them to see it. I think it's good for this team with high expectation to get punched in the mouth early in the season, get a reality check. You haven't arrived yet. You have not arrived yet. You've got to put in the work.
Well, like I said, the center falling on that fumble is an example of why offensive linemen got to play to the whistle. Mm-hmm. Run down there, even if you're running back. I know you can't catch them,
right?
But get on down there. You might be able to block something, or if something
goes wrong, look what happens.
Get a fumble, you get a fumble recovery.
So do you think the Broncos defense is more like what we saw in the second half or the first half, where there were guys running wide open, there were missed tackles all over the place, or was that just the rust?
I think that definitely was the rust and just the speed of the game. Although we've practiced against I'm sure we've gone 1s versus 1s, It still wasn't live. It still wasn't in that pressure cooker, where, you got to get the call quickly. They're hurrying up to the line of scrimmage, and you got to figure out, they're going motion. So many different things happening so quickly, and when real bullets weren't flying, it's a different story. Now the real bullets are flying. All this counts, and this is another level of pressure, I think, that makes it to where, hey, if you make the wrong decision, hey, you're going to have to pay for it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve, for swinging by. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, breaking down the Broncos Seahawks for Benjamin Allbright. I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's gonna win! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.